familiar faces, and even lovelier, some faces that aren't as familiar. Maybe you've been here just for the first time, or for the first several times. We're really, really glad that you've taken some time this afternoon to hear about the art and architecture of St. Stephen's. I am the Reverend Kyle Sage. I'm flying under the radar. I realized I took my collar off when I got home. I forgot to put it back on, so if any of you St. Stephen's people don't recognize me, just ask someone else. I have been here just over 18 months. I came from Mississippi, sort of the land of beautiful churches and homes. And when I came to this church, when I saw this church for the first time, actually online, before I interviewed, I was blown away and just astonished online for the pictures and reading something about it. And every day since I've been here, I've learned a little bit more and have been told a little more information about it. So it's not only been a delight and a pleasure for me to lead this congregation and to worship in this church, but to know that this is such a jewel and a treasure, and not only in Marin County, but here in Belvedere. So we're grateful and pleased and so delighted to have everyone here today. And I don't know the lineup for the 4 speeches. I think I'm finished. But Pam Martori will begin our presentation. Thank you all.
Turning you up until they can hear you.
Should I just keep testing?
Oh.
No,
Yeah, let me just check it.
talk amongst yourselves. But it is also a place of artistic and musical significance. For those of us who are here often, the space becomes so familiar that even the remarkable is no longer noticed. And we hope that after today, you will see our church, your church, with new eyes, the same as a newcomer. And for you who are new to St. Stephen's, you may have driven by the church dozens, maybe hundreds of times, and probably wondered how in the world this building ever got past the plane which it developed. But we hope that you will feel welcome to return, to come anytime. The church is open Tuesday to Friday during office hours and then, of course, every Sunday. The plan for today is to have 35 minutes or so of presentation on the architecture, radical for this time, designed in accordance with the vision of one man by Jean Pierre. The windows, which are celebrities on their own, in their own right, as the first of their kind in the United States, right here, by Karen Gold. And the icons on the pillars in the nave, some of the very few ornamentations added after the completion of the space by Jimmy DeLay. And then the Christus Rex, our Christus Rex, a legend by me. And if all goes well, after the presentations, we'll have 15 minutes for questions and answers, and then time for you to wander and see some of these elements more closely with experts stationed with a name badge by these elements where you can get more information. Because the acoustics are so good here, the concerts are culture, and many artists can record here. But while our acoustics are legendary, there are pockets where it can be hard to hear spoken word. So if indeed I can hear my voice very well, but if indeed during any of the presentations you cannot hear what is about what we did before with the distal section of here, everybody else can hear about this. But if you raise your hand, then your body will adjust microphone and we'll be here. So for now, just sit back and relax while we turn back the clock 70 years. And Jean Pierre will start the journey.
So many of you know I'm an architect, and I have served on the years historic preservation committee for many years in the past, and so it's been a lot of fun for me to research the history of the sanctuary. So St. Stephen's was originally located over on Acacia Avenue here in Belvedere. And the rector at the time, Edward Moore, played a very instrumental role in establishing the parameters that were to be used in creating the sanctuary. And the parish is very fortunate to still have the written document, 25 pages long, that he wrote establishing those parameters. And I will give you the short version of that. The internal finish should be the essential component. Emphasis should be on historic liturgical proportions. Horizontally, length needs to be 5 times the width. Motion forward toward the ulnar should be irresistible, which should be achieved with adequate length to width ratio, 2.5 times height to width. Masonry and concrete were to be used to convey the timelessness of the message, permanence, and strength. And contemporary methods of construction should be used. It was not to look nostalgically to previous styles. It was not to harmonize or blend with the surroundings. And it is not the surrounding landscape, and it should not be dwarfed by the surroundings. So, schematic architectural drawings were run up by a local architect in order to facilitate locating an appropriate site. This site was acquired from what was originally the old Belvedere golf course. It was one of the first plots, and it was purchased, it was a quarter of an acre, and it was purchased for $11,000. It met all the criteria we were looking for. There would be no distortion of the church building in order to meet the dimensions that were required. It allowed for access to the church building from the street level. No stairs were required, and there were no neighbors who could have a very prominent position. So the Tiburon Pelican, November 1953, stated, a local architect was hired to complete a contemporary design based on historic forms. Ernest Winkler of Winkler & Winkler was selected to be that architect. He had lived at 112 Bella Vista Avenue, right here in Belvedere, and most importantly, he was part of a core of regional architects that were practicing in the raw concrete or brutalist style of architecture. This new radical decision to use raw concrete or brute design emerged in the 1940s. The origin of this style of construction stems from France, where architect Le Corbusier focused on highlighting concrete to convey structure, strength, honesty, and a reverence for the raw materials. So in the Bay Area, between 1945 and 1970, many institutional buildings were built in this brutalist style. For example, the Bauer Wooster Hall over on the UC Berkeley campus, which was designed by William Wurstler, who was a colleague of Winkler's. The old UC Berkeley Art Museum, the Oakland Museum of California, the Pyramid in San Francisco, the Hyatt Regency in San Francisco, and St. Mary's Cathedral are all examples of this style of architecture. So it was still pretty rare for a parish or community church to be built in this style. So this church is quite unique, and especially in Marin County, one of a kind. Simple shapes, so the interior space may dictate the essential elements. Raw concrete to show permanence and strength, and not looking back to older methods of church construction. Concrete conveyed modern innovation, and timelessness through freedom from stylish techniques. So the sanctuary took 11 months to build, and it was dedicated in 1955, and it cost $110,000. So, in the late 1960s, John Thornton was director, and John was remembered as being quite an innovator, and he rearranged the worship space to adding the central communal altar and relocating the font to the entry of the church. His belief was the congregation was central to the service, and that the focus should not be on the rector, but it should be on the people. So a parishioner had spotted one of David Foss's furniture pieces in a design showroom in San Francisco. And he introduced David to John, and Foss was a self-taught craftsman, as many woodworkers are, with the wood shop in Somerville. And in the Bay Area, and Marin especially, craft was a stronghold, and St. Stephen's was to benefit from this. Foss, for instance, was a member of the Bouline's Crafts Guild, located over in Lenas. And this guild was founded by Art Carpenter, who has well-known pieces in the Smithsonian and the New York Home. And Foss was very influenced by the Danish modern design, which was important to the guild, but also influenced by art in particular. And art more directly impacted the furnishings in his sanctuary. The piece in the narthex, or the entry, is by Art Carpenter. So David purchased a pallet of California walnut, small pieces, 4-inch by 6 foot, from Art Carpenter. And these were the inspiration for the complex joinery that you see in both the altar and the font. So the circular design was John's, but the hexagonal shape was David's. So the altar and the font and the candlesticks are all California walnut, oil finished with no stain. Unfortunately, I thought David would be able to join us today. He let me know he couldn't come today, but I was able to get all this information that you heard directly from him. So we are so glad that he was able to talk with us. So many years later, it was determined that that the church needed a pulpit, and early schematic drawings, design drawings, were done by myself. The wood and the finish was to match the altar, and the circular design and the joinery were to mirror the altar as well. And it was supposed to be high enough so you all could see, but not too lofty. And so then a search began to try to find someone who would be willing to, was interested in building the pulpit, but also capable of building it. So one of our parishioners, Jan Millett, volunteers to build the pulpit. And so Jan was quite a wood craftsman, and he created the working drawings for the pulpit, where he was strongly influenced by George Nakashima, who is a contemporary wood craftsman, and he's famous for the peace altar at St. John the Divine, and also honored at the DNA in the Med. And Jan drove up to Oregon to purchase some of the last pieces of wide plank California walnut, and he spent close to 2,000 hours in his garage working on it. It is oil finish, no stain, and it was installed in 2023. And Jan is with us today. So, in conclusion, I'd like to say that this parish is very fortunate to be the recipients of such innovative thinking by its rectors, and to have built a sanctuary at a time when Marin County, but the Bay Area and Marin County especially, had such a vibrant architecture and craft tradition. And the art and architecture that followed on those early days is a testament to this. And now I'd like to introduce Karen Club.
And it's very fun to be up in this moment too. We like it. So the story I'm going to tell about our celebrity windows starts in Paris, France. We're now here in Belvedere, California, and it's what put St. Stephen's on the map of global art history. In 2022, when a scholar invited us to, and we were invited to come to church to hear a scholar talk about our windows, I was a little bit skeptical. In my experience, stained glass windows depicted a marvelous theme from the Bible that we all know, or was really the central part of the sanctuary. And that wasn't the case here. Well, after I listened to Laura Buchner, I realized once again that I had a lot to learn. Buchner received her Master's of Science in Preservation and Conservation at Columbia University in New York. She's worked on numerous restoration projects since then, including St. John's the Divine, St. Patrick's Cathedral, and Grand Central Terminal. She received a fellowship to study French stained glass, which is what brought her to St. Stephen's. She was thrilled to be here, and her enthusiasm permeated her talk. She is now releasing a book, which is the culmination of her studies. We will be in the book, including with pictures. It's supposed to come out in August, so stay tuned for more information on that. Before I proceed, I need to acknowledge that 99% of my remarks come directly from her talk. And I also need to apologize for my French accent because we are going to be back in France a bit. Vocabulary, our windows are called dalle de verre, which in French sounds elegant. In English basically means slabs of glass. Sometimes it's also called faceted windows. You'll hear both of those terms. In 1929, a French artist, Jean Gaudin, was preparing for a gallery show at the Albertini Glass Studio. He saw some glass lying around the studio. He liked the colors, he liked the shapes. He joined them in a pattern and used cement to do so, a luminescent mosaic. Okay. It did very well at the show. Other artists asked to be taught the technique. So during the 30s, they worked on it a bit. There were some installations, but it was very limited. There is one exception, and that's in 1939. Auguste Belvedere, who was a student of Gaudin, came to Quebec City in Montreal. St. Anne's, Beaupré, was the site that he was at to create and install the windows at that beautiful cathedral. This installation had quite an extended timeline. Started in 1939, it wasn't completed until 1950. However, we all know there was a lot going on in the world in the 1940s, so we won't attribute it all to the typical construction delay. Dalle de verre really came into its own after World War II for understandable reasons. In Europe, there was a need to rebuild hundreds of churches in England, France, Germany, the other countries. They also needed something that was relatively efficient to build in terms of cost and how long it took to put together, and they needed something the materials were available. This style of window, the dalle de verre, also lends itself to the abstract design, and as we just heard, the modern design aesthetic was coming into style. So it really fit. In those cases, the French artists dispersed across Europe, the countryside in France, and they were the ones who created and installed these windows. On our side of the Atlantic, the GIs were back, the baby boom was happening, the suburbs were created. Church building was occurring at an unprecedented level, and the same types of dynamics were going on. Needed something that could be put together fast, it met the design aesthetic, and also the French artists were coming to North America to make that happen. So let's go to 1953 here in Belvedere. We have our amazing design principles. We have our architect with the striking concrete building. The award, the contract for the windows was given to the H.W. Cummings studio, located right here in the Bay Area. In fact, the Cummings family, lived in Corinthian Island. Our design principles did not mention the windows specifically. However, certainly the abstract, more modern approach to using the colored glass meets that design aesthetic. It's also said that St. Stephen's, the name of our church, that the slabs represent the rocks used to martyr St. Stephen's. Cummings had collaborated previously with Roger de Carrere, who was an artist located in California. He had been educated initially in France and knew the Belvedere technique. He'd been in the United States since World War II and he had been established as a citizen. These windows were created. We really do not have other background on that, but we do know they are recognized as the first installation entirely by an American studio, the first installation in the world by an American studio, right here in Belvedere. The Cummings studio moved to Massachusetts. Their archives, and they've now closed, their archives do not have anything on St. Stephen's that Buckner was able to find. So the windows really have to speak for themselves. And we're very fortunate that they do and that it's a sunny day, so we can really take advantage of really looking at their beautiful colors. Buckner was quite taken by their beauty and also their durability after almost 70 years. In terms of the custom nature of this, as the technique became more popular in the United States and other places globally, the windows, the glass, the slabs of glass became much more uniform, about 1 inch thick, 6 inches wide. What you can see, and I invite you afterwards to stand immediately below and look up, you can see the great dimensionality of these windows. They were cut and then they were chiseled to really bring out the color. So that's why we have that great non-uniform, custom-made look, and the colors are just so brilliant. You can also really understand, if you've heard faceted before, it's joined, often used for a gem, a wonderful gem, and that's where you can see the edges really bring out the colors too. It's quite striking. Later installations of this pattern were also held together with epoxy. We've used concrete, or they used concrete there. Epoxy is much more practical, much more durable. Buckner was also very surprised at what great shape these windows are in. She works in restoration, so she would have quite an eye if there were some issues. So we're very grateful for why that is. It has been suggested that we used a custom formulation for our concrete, which made it much more durable than other installations. What you'll note is our abstract design on this floor, the large windows depict the Christian symbol of a fish. Right? The smaller windows in the upper area, and I really hope that you can make your way up to our choir loft where you get the best view. You can see other Christian symbols. There's the candle, the star, a carpenter's square, the chalice, and the baton. So once again, it's very abstract, but it's great to have those clues and be able to see it from up there. You also get a much better view of the color. So I think these windows, and my concluding remark is, they really reflect the legacy of St. Stephen's dedication to the arts. Also, our place in this community and the great talent to be found across Marin and even right here in Belvedere. And finally, they reflect our leading-edge approach to reflecting our faith. So thank you. I'm now going to introduce Jenny Doyle, who's going to talk about the art on the pillars and in the Mary picture. Great.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our icons. We have 5 icons hanging on the wall, St. Stephen's, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Some years ago, Rob Gieselman was our rector, and he decided to go on a lovely drive up the coast of California to see the rock formations on the beaches. And he and a friend drove up there, and then they stopped in Port Arturo, just on the Oregon border, and took a walk. And they passed an art gallery and looked in the window and thought they saw pictures of Jesus on display. So they walked in and spoke to the owner, Lane, who explained that yes, these were pictures of Jesus, that, but they weren't old, and like they thought they might be. She had painted them 3 weeks before. And she said somebody came in the gallery and said the Russians were coming, and their delegation was going to be there in town, and to paint something the Russians might want to buy. And so she thought of icons. And so she and her husband had been out on the beach combing as they usually did, and they saw this big, huge sheet of tin that was rusted, and the colors were gorgeous. And they dragged it home and put some oil paint and some gold leaf on it, and thought, wow, we could make an icon out of this. And so that's what she did. She painted on this corroded tin to make these paintings of icons. And Rob said, I just love them. I'm the minister of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Belvedere, California, and I want to buy these for our church. How much are they? And she said, they're $2,000, sir. And he said, oh, for the three? And she said, oh, no, for each one. And he said, oh, well, we don't have a bunch like that for our work, but thank you so much for showing them to us. He said, you know what? You could do me a huge favor. We have been wanting to photograph these icons somewhere that looked religious. We're going to a wedding near you in Belvedere next weekend, and we could bring them down, hang them in your church, go to the wedding, come back and take photographs and then take them back home. Would that be okay? And he said, sure, I'll take them for a weekend. So she did. She brought them down and hung them up, and on Sunday, when everybody at St. Stephen's saw these icons, they just went crazy. And they wanted to buy them for St. Stephen's. So somebody, maybe Doyle, had the idea of groups getting together and purchasing one. And then they did, and then they purchased the second one and the third one. So in that weekend, we had 3 purchases. It was fantastic. And then the next week or so, another group got together and purchased a 4th one, which is in the entrance. And then I decided, my husband had just died, and I was looking for something to honor him with. And I purchased the 5th one in his honor, which is in Mary's Corner. I wondered, what was it that made this woman such a fantastic artist, which she was? And I looked into her background, and she had been born and raised in New York and New Jersey area, gone through the public school system, not really majoring in art or anything. And then she went to some of the cathedrals on her lunch hour and stuff, and she got hooked on art. And then she decided she wanted to maybe teach art, and so she took some advanced courses and learned how to teach art and art history, and also art therapy. She ended up teaching that as well, and both in New York and also in places in Canada. And then she met a man, she decided she wanted to marry, and he was in love with her artwork. And he said, look, I'm retiring from my business. I'll manage your business and set up your shows and all that stuff, and you just paint. So that's what she did. And he decided that they should move to Oregon. So they moved to Port Arturo, and then a little bit later now, I think they're living in a place called Bantam, which is lovely. It has its own golf course, which is famous, and it has its own airport, and there are lots of artists there, not just Elaine. So anyway, I have an idea for you, and that is to do what I'm planning on doing one day, and that is drive up, take a weekend off, or a weekend, and drive up the coast of California and see these gorgeous beaches, and then go see Elaine in Bantam. And I can give you her information, contact information, and I can, even call her for you and set up a meeting, and she would love to see you and show you around. So thank you so much for coming. I'll be back from Mary's Corner if you have any questions afterwards.
As Jean told you, it was Reverend Moore's vision and very specific plan to create a space where worshipers are encouraged to look forward. And you've heard from Jean and from Karen that he chose the most modern materials and technology for this building. And from this we know that Reverend Moore was no shrinking violet. And so while you may have missed the windows, it is impossible to miss the Christus Rex, our crucifix. Reverend Moore intended the crucifix to be the focus of this structure. It had to be really big to fill the space. It had to be as bold as his other choices. And in fact, it is as radical as the building itself. Take a look at the crucifix, and what do you see? It is a crucifix, but not the often emaciated, crucified Christ. This instead is Christ the King. How many crucifixes have you seen like this in churches? There aren't many. Really, there are not many. I tried to research it online, could only find those that are in churches that are called Christ the King. So, there are no nail holes in Christ's hands or feet. He is not in agony, but in glory. And look at his appearance. He is not the blonde, blue-eyed Christ in European representations. The color of his skin is that of a Middle Eastern man. The wood is stained, so the color is intentional. He could have used maple if he wanted a Caucasian Jesus. His eyes are brown, and his hair and beard are dark brown, also consistent with a Middle Eastern man. The artist's style is elongated body, soft curves, exaggerated proportions, especially his hands. And what you cannot see without binoculars or a blown up photo from your phone is that using the grain of the wood, the growth ring, the artist left a mark on the left side of Christ's chest, and like a heart. And I'll be standing at the Christus Rex afterwards, and I hope that you'll come by, because I'll show you photos, or take a picture yourself, and you'll see. And if this is not radical enough for you now, remember that the sculpture was carved in 1953. So who is the artist? Reverend Moore chose a local sculptor, Dave Lemon, and commissioned the carving of the Christus Rex. The height and the weight are unknown, but as the height of the church is 2.5 times the width, and it fills the space, it is tall, larger than life-sized. We don't know much about how much it cost, but we do know that it was underwritten, at least in a significant way, by a family who lived in Belvedere in the Organ House, and owned the Red Vine Licorice Company, the Kretschmer family. David Lemon was born in 1908. He was a sailor, a boat builder, a sculptor who had lived in Seattle, and in 1937, he sailed to San Francisco seeking work on projects at the Golden Gate International Exposition, the GGIE, on Treasure Island, a World's Fair, celebrating among many things that San Francisco had completed 2 bridges in the period right before that. The fair employed 3,000 people, including many artists who painted as the public watched. To name 2 of them, Diego Rivera, who painted the Pan-American Unity mural that was recently at SF MoMA for 2 years on view, now back at City College, and Benny Bufano, who was working on a bust of St. Francis for the California Hall. When the fair closed, Lemon discovered an abandoned cod fishery on the west shore of Belvedere. The Union Fish Company had opened in the 1860s, but a fire had destroyed the facility in 1937. And David and his artist wife, Jerry O'Day, lived, worked, and maintained a gallery there from 1940 to 65. And it became a thriving center of a prominent art community. Again, on a wharf that's on what is now West Shore. And as a reminder, so now where we are in this time travel is that we're in 1954, a long time before West Shore area was developed. or even had a road. The wharf and the remaining cod fishery was all that was there, secluded from Belvedere. There were no roads to get there. The current road, which is built on fill, was built much, much later. The only way to get there was by foot, using a very steep path of 300 steps, or by boat. So if you've ever walked on West Shore Drive, and you look up, you're on the road that is filled, but if you're looking up, it is a steep, treacherous cliff that would go straight down to the water, and that's where it was. But back to St. Stephen's. So why did Reverend Moore select David Lemon for the crucifix? His wood sculptures before this were largely tabletop size, 12 to 16 inches, with nothing of the scale of Christus Rex. And why was it a crucifix with Christus Rex, Christ the King, and not a traditional crucified Christ? And if the Clarence Krebsner family was underwriting, did they get a say in what it looked like? And we don't know any of those answers, but we do know that while David Lemon was a local artist, he had a reputation and a resume by now. While his name is not well known, that in part is because he loved the hippie lifestyle that they were living in this artist colony. They made art for art. We weren't interested really in the commercial part of it. He did exhibit in large exhibitions with names that you do know. Ruth Azawa, Richard Diebenkorn, Elmer Bischoff, William Wiley, and others. The GGIE had brought new international ideas to San Francisco. It was a World's Fair. And we have Reverend Moore's words, lots of his words, but we have his words that say that he wanted a sanctuary where the worshipers are encouraged to look ahead at the gateway to the throne of God. And I'll say that one more time because it's pretty important as to why the choice of this crucifix. He wanted a sanctuary where the worshipers are encouraged to look ahead at the gateway to the throne of God. So, of course, a king, right, with a crown. We also know that the Christus Rex was born there at the cod fishery and then hauled by foot over a steep hill and installed here in 1954. Now, returning back to the GGIE for a moment, Lemon and his wife, Jerry O'Day, worked there for Benny Bufano as assistants. And do you see Bufano's influence in Lemon's Christus Rex? Large scale, modern, smooth, rounded, simple, exaggerated form. There's nothing written on it, but I can't help but think that there's a connection. David Lemon died in 1997, but right before his death, the September before his death, there was a retrospective of his work, of woodworks, here at St. Stephen's, with sculptures that were lent from private collections, including a piece that Grace Cathedral bought in 1957, with the Christus Rex, of course, the focal point of the exhibition. It was sponsored by, this is why I asked about the Landmarks Society, it was sponsored by the Landmark Society and St. Stephen's. And his memorial service was held here at St. Stephen's with memorial donations requested for the Landmark Society, so it meant a great deal to him. This is just a taste of the amazing story behind the Christus Rex, and I hope that you'll come up and talk to me afterwards for more information. So now I'll take that hat off, my Christus Rex hat off, and now as MC, we'll now have time for questions and answers, and then we hope you'll wander around the space, come up to the place where the original altar, this was where the original altar was, right where that black box is beneath the Christus Rex, and see the Christus Rex from underneath, and also get a killer view of the organ, just killer. And as Karen had suggested, stand beneath, right up against the wall and look up at the windows to get the most beautiful view of the three-dimensionality of those windows. And look at the 5 icons up close. They're intentionally dark the very best way, they're intentionally dark to invite you to look closer. And go up to the choir loft to see the organ and the very best place to see the clerestory windows. Experts will be stationed. We're all wearing badges, identified with badges. And now we have time for some questions. When you ask a question, I'll repeat it so that it can be recorded and also that all can hear. And probably your answer to anyway. Do we have questions? Anne.
I guess this is a practical architecture question. What was put in to make this withstand earthquakes?
Okay, so the question is, what was put into the architecture to make it earthquake sturdy?
Seismic was there.
And I'll leave that to Jean.
I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. I guess I have to.
Hey, Jean, can you grab the mic? Thank you.
No, I don't have an answer.
But we do know that when we were studying,
Have been for concrete and for rebar, but I don't know about the.
Related question. I thought that I actually made an earthquake out on this structure. No. I know a little bit about the concrete. Of course, my information has come from people who told me things orally. So if you've ever done history, you know the guess to people, and you might get two different stories, and you're never quite sure. But I was told that this concrete, at the time that it was put in, was incredibly high tech, and that the formula for the concrete was 2 pages single space, and it's not your typical concrete. So if you've ever been to see the Parthenon in Rome, you know that concrete done in the best manner possible is extremely strong. And this does have reinforced steel in it, and of course we make sure that this concrete is sealed on a regular basis and moisture is taken from it. And we have had the building looked at from experts to assess the earthquake. So we think we're pretty good, but you know how California is, and the concrete is iron. So you know at some point in time we need to make sure we watch that issue carefully.
other questions?
What religious implications of the dimensions? I call there is one, but I don't remember what it is.
Well, Reverend Moore, we don't know where his knowledge comes from. And I wish we knew more about him, but he was looking at traditional cathedral construction. So he was looking at the height and the width of what, Notre Dame or, cathedrals in Europe were, and that's where he was getting his dimensions from. What we don't know is where he got that knowledge from. That was well.
Jane, I've got a question. Could you tell us about the organ? How we got this marvelous organ some years ago?
Because the question is, can we tell you something about the organ? And if we did, we would be here till tomorrow, so we won't. But sorry. So mercifully we won't. But we would. We plan to have a part 2 and a part 3 of these series, and give the organ its due, because it really does deserve. And the choir loft, because that's an important thing also. That choir loft wasn't here originally. And was quite controversial, etc. And also the ornamentation on there. So if it's okay with you, however, that we will save that for another time, and we'll do a really good job where we can spend at least a half an hour talking about the organ and the choir loft and the decoration of the choir loft. I'm so sorry. Yes, Gretchen.
I know the acoustics are so famous for this church, and so many recordings have been done here because they're so perfect. Was that planned, or was that a surprise?
I think that would be a surprise. Yeah, I know we got asked by one of the choir members last during Lou's talk we did, and I could find nothing on the acoustics in the drawings that would have predicted it. So I think it was just luck.
And we will say also that we can confirm that while many of the things are myths, and we're trying hard now to find the facts, do research, and record all this, is that this part we know for certain, and that is when it was told that Paul Simon recorded a bridge over troubled waters here. That's in part true, and that is that the instrumentals were recorded here. Not the voice, but the instrumentals were recorded here. But there are people recording here all the time because of the acoustics.
I wonder if the pillars, if the seating on either side of the pillars was a thought that came way after the beginning of the design, because the sight lines are so bad.
You would think so, but no. He had actually planned to have the majority of the seating, and then he had the side aisles for additional revenue awarded. So that was all his intention. And he included that, and he actually specified exactly how big the church should be, how many people it should seat, how wide the side aisle should be. He was very verbose. I mean, it was a single space, 25 pages. I mean, every detail was laid out, and it did include the side aisles.
Can you tell us about the blue ceiling?
Okay. So it's my understanding that, maybe Jen knows more, that the original ceiling had effervescence on it, which is, the kind of the swelling that happens with concrete. And so it started to stain, and they decided to paint it. And one of the parishioners, Neil Wackley, who is a local artist, chose the blue color. So that's where that came from.
Right. In summary, it was not in Reverend Moore's plan.
No, at all.
And it was accidental. So, yeah. Janice.
Is there any historical interest to the pews? Were these the original pews that were installed when the church was built, or would these be added laterally, or is there anything?
There's nothing on the pews, but the pews are not anything special. I mean, they're just sort, you can order this kind of pew, online or anywhere. They were not part of the unique furnishing.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah. I don't know whether they were original or not, whether they did comparisons with these. Though there is some, maybe because some of the pews there were more pews up here because the altar was further up. So this space was filled with pews as well. So maybe they had to be here that long. Yeah. So it says yes.
There's information on the big bags.
Oh yeah, those are right. Yeah.
When my husband was still alive, he used to bring a pillow to church. He started bringing pillows to church to sit on and brought these, and I said, I think you better get some big bags.
So Ginny's not asking a question, but a comment about the cushions, which also were not in the original plan. I'm pretty sure Reverend Moore wanted us to sit up straight and pay attention. But with regard to the acoustics, our music director at the time, this was a very big decision. You might think, okay, making it more comfortable for people to sit was kind of easy, a no-brainer, right? Of course. But in fact, there was much concern over what that would do to the acoustics in this space. That's how good it is. Anne?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what to call these camel boulders that are adjacent to the pews, kind of look like they.
Those are David Fox as well. David Fox did he actually did the lecture, which is more of the Danish look. But he did the altar and the font, the candlesticks, the candle holders on you see on the walls. And then he also built the table that we have in the foyer. Yeah. So all those works. Yeah.
And so, did you have a comment or a question?
I did, but I think it's gonna.
One more.
I think it's about the acoustics and there was and the
I can't hear you.
concerning the acoustics, the music director had a lot to say about what could be used in the church because they wanted to preserve the wonderful acoustics. So, for example, there was a time when they wanted to put a red carpet down the center aisle, and the music director said, no, absolutely not. He agreed with the Christians, but not the carpet.
Thank you, sir. I think we have time for one more, and there was, I'm looking straight into Claire, so I just see it.
It's Kathy. But whoever mentioned the pillars and what were they thinking, someone over here, I thought the same thing when I first came to St. Stephen's, but as I've been here for about 20 plus years, I totally get it now, because sometimes you're here and you don't want to be with anyone else, or you just want your own space, and then you kind of move throughout the church when you're in a different place in your life. So it really, I was like, this is crazy, and it's cold, and it's this and it's that, but it makes all the sense in the world to me now, but I didn't get it.
So I think to keep us on schedule and honor your afternoon, with no more formal questions, then this concludes the formal program. But please wander and look close. Refreshments are being served in the courtyard, and you are very, very welcome to go get a beverage and come back into the church and wander and look. Greeters, we also have name tags on that say greeters, have pamphlets with brief descriptions of these elements and more. And if you wish to be notified of future lectures or concerts that we have here, please see a greeter for a sign-up sheet. For instance, July 7th, our music director and with another person that's having a duet of pianos, American music, so it'll be Bernstein, Cole Porter, Sondheim, and Gershwin in this church at 7 o'clock at night at no charge, but it'll give you a chance to test drive the acoustics, etc. So, and also we're very curious for those of you who are almost first-timers inside the building, we're very curious to know how you heard about this. So if you wouldn't mind telling the greeters with or without contact information how you found out about this, that helps us plan for the future. And we thank you very much for being here. Thank you so much.